My life was a spreadsheet. Not literally, though sometimes I wished it was. Numbers I could manipulate, formulas to make sense of the chaos. Instead, I had deadlines, meetings, and the relentless hum of the city, all vying for my attention. I am Josie, and at 24, I'd carved out a neat little niche for myself in the corporate world. My days were structured, predictable, and if I was being honest, a little beige. I'd always considered myself a logical person. Emotions were messy, unpredictable, best left to poets and therapists. Love, as far as I could tell, was a statistical anomaly, a glitch in the system that led to messy breakups and ruined lives. My romantic history reflected this, a string of polite, passionless dates with men who fit the profile, ambitious, stable, and utterly uninspiring. Each morning, I followed the same routine. Alarm at 6:30 a.m., precisely 8 minutes in the shower, a protein bar on the go, and the 7:15 express train to the city. My uniform consisted of tailored suits in muted colors, practical heels, and a severe bun that tamed my unruly, dark hair. I favored efficiency over extravagance, substance over style. But even the most meticulously planned lives have their cracks. Mine appeared every day at 12:30 p.m. in the form of a caffeine craving and the need for a temporary escape from the fluorescent-lit prison of my office. This led me to the daily grind, a coffee shop on the ground floor of my building. It was always packed, a cacophony of ringing phones and hurried conversations, but the coffee was decent, and the people watching was unparalleled. I liked observing the world, dissecting it, figuring out the algorithms that governed human behavior. I blended into the background, a silent observer, content to analyze without participating. My gaze would drift over the clientele, a mix of suits like myself, freelancers tapping away on laptops, and the occasional artist type, all vying for space and overpriced lattes. I am not particularly striking. However, some say I possess a beauty that is not easy to ignore. I stand at 5'7", and I am of mixed heritage. My dark hair is thick and often pulled back into a tight bun, accentuating high cheekbones and a strong jawline. My eyes are a deep brown, almost black, and framed by thick lashes. I tend to dress in a way that minimizes attention, preferring tailored suits and muted colors, but the cut of my clothes often accentuates my lean, athletic build. One Tuesday, I walked into the daily grind to find it even more chaotic than usual. The line snaked out the door, every table was occupied, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and desperation. I almost turned around, deciding that the spreadsheet could wait, but then I spotted an empty seat at a table near the window. As I made my way towards it, I noticed a girl already sitting there, engrossed in a book. She was the antithesis of everything I represented, vibrant, messy, and utterly captivating. Her name was Ruby. At least, that's what I soon found out. She was a splash of color in my monochrome world. Ruby. Her name suited her. Ruby's hair was a riot of fiery red curls that seemed to defy gravity, escaping the confines of a haphazardly tied scarf. She wore a vintage floral dress that looked like it had been plucked from a 1970s movie, paired with combat boots that hinted at a rebellious streak. Her fingers, adorned with an array of rings, danced across the pages of her book, a well-worn copy of something by Kerouac. She was the kind of girl I usually avoided, loud, expressive, and unapologetically herself. I preferred the company of those who adhered to the unspoken rules of corporate conformity. But there was something undeniably magnetic about her, a raw energy that drew me in despite my better judgment. "Excuse me," I said, my voice barely audible above the din. "Is this seat taken?" Ruby looked up, her eyes, a startling shade of green, widening in surprise. A genuine, uncalculated smile spread across her face, crinkling the corners of her eyes. "Nope, all yours," she said, her voice a husky melody that cut through the noise. I sat down, placing my briefcase on the floor. An awkward silence descended as I waited for her to return to her book. But she didn't. She continued to look at me, her gaze curious, almost playful. "So," she said, leaning forward, "what brings a suit like you to a place like this?" I bristled slightly at the suit comment, but I couldn't deny its accuracy. Caffeine, I replied curtly, and a temporary reprieve from spreadsheets. Ruby chuckled, a warm, throaty sound that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. Spreadsheets, huh? Sounds thrilling. You have no idea, I muttered, already regretting my decision to sit at this table. I'm Ruby, by the way, she said, extending a hand. Her touch was warm, calloused, and lingered a fraction longer than necessary. Josie, I replied, shaking her hand briefly. Nice to meet you, Josie, she said, her eyes sparkling with amusement. So, what kind of spreadsheets are we talking about? Budget projections? Market analysis? I hesitated, surprised by her genuine interest. Financial modeling, I said. Risk assessment. The usual. Fascinating, she said, though I suspected she was being sarcastic. I'm an artist, she added, gesturing to her book. I paint. Mostly landscapes. Sometimes abstract stuff. Interesting, I said, struggling to find anything to say. My world revolved around numbers, data, and quantifiable results. Art was subjective. Intangible. So, Josie from the spreadsheets, she continued, her voice laced with a teasing tone. What do you do for fun? Besides, balancing the books of the world. I paused, realizing that I didn't have a good answer. My life was all work and no play. I read, I said lamely. Nonfiction. Biographies. Occasionally, a thriller. Ruby's eyebrows shot up. No guilty pleasures? No reality TV binges? No dancing till dawn? I shook my head, feeling a strange mix of embarrassment and envy. Not really, I admitted. Well, Josie, Ruby said, her smile widening. I think you and I are going to be friends. I almost choked on my own saliva. Friends? With this vibrant, chaotic creature? The idea seemed absurd. Impossible. And yet, a tiny, rebellious part of me found the prospect intriguing. My coffee arrived, saving me from having to respond. I took a sip, the familiar bitterness grounding me. Don't get your hopes up, I said, returning to my default setting of detached cynicism. I'm not exactly the friendliest person. Ruby simply laughed, a sound that echoed in the crowded coffee shop, cutting through my carefully constructed walls. We'll see about that, Josie, she said, her green eyes twinkling. We'll see. Against my better judgment, I found myself gravitating towards the daily grind at 12:30 p.m. every day. The spreadsheet could wait. The allure of Ruby's vibrant energy was proving to be a stronger pull than I'd anticipated. The first few days were awkward. I was used to polite, superficial conversations, not the probing questions and playful banter that Ruby seemed to thrive on. She challenged my assumptions, questioned my choices, and forced me to confront the beige reality of my existence. She'd ask about my dreams, which I hadn't considered since childhood, my fears, which I kept buried deep, and my definition of happiness, which I struggled to articulate. I, in turn, learned about her passion for art, her love of nature, and her unwavering belief in the power of human connection. Ruby told me about her studio, a small, sun-drenched space above a bookstore, filled with canvases, paints, and the scent of turpentine. She described her artistic process, the way she translated emotions and experiences onto the canvas, creating worlds that were both beautiful and unsettling. I tried to understand, to appreciate the abstract concept she espoused, but my logical mind struggled to grasp the nuances of artistic expression. Yet, despite our differences, we found common ground. We shared a love of books, though our genres differed wildly, a disdain for office politics, and a secret fondness for bad puns. Gradually, the awkward silences disappeared, replaced by easy conversation and comfortable camaraderie. I started noticing the small things about her. The way she chewed on the end of her paintbrush when she was deep in thought, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her art, the way she always managed to find the silver lining in even the most dire situations. One afternoon, Ruby arrived at the daily grind with a smudge of paint on her cheek. "Don't you ever clean up?" I teased, handing her a napkin. She grinned, wiping the pain away. Cleaning is for the creatively bankrupt, she declared dramatically. Besides, it's a badge of honor. As I watched her laugh, I felt a strange warmth spread through my chest. It was an unfamiliar sensation, a feeling of affection. I quickly suppressed it, reminding myself that emotions were messy and unreliable. But the more time I spent with Ruby, the harder it became to ignore the growing attraction. Her touch, once casual, now lingered. Her gaze, once playful, now held a hint of something deeper. And her laughter was becoming my favorite sound in the world. One particularly busy afternoon, the daily grind was even more packed than usual. We squeezed into our usual table, barely enough room for our coffees. As I reached for my cup, my hand brushed against Ruby's. A jolt of electricity shot through me, making me jump. Ruby looked at me, her green eyes wide with surprise. "Sorry," I mumbled, pulling my hand away. "No worries," she said, her voice soft. But I could feel her gaze on me, scrutinizing, questioning. I avoided her eyes, focusing on my coffee, trying to ignore the rapid beating of my heart. We sat in silence for a few moments, the air thick with unspoken tension. Finally, Ruby spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Josie," she said. "Is something different?" I hesitated, my mind racing. How much should I reveal? How much could I afford to admit? "I don't know what you mean," I said, my voice betraying my nervousness. Ruby reached across the table, her fingers gently grazing my hand. "Yes, you do," she said, her eyes searching mine. "I can feel it." I looked down at our hands, the contrast stark, my pale, manicured fingers against her tanned, paint-stained ones. It was a reflection of our differences, our opposing worlds. And yet, in that moment, I realized that those differences were what drew me to her. She was the missing piece of my carefully constructed puzzle, the color that brought my beige world to life. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the plunge. "Maybe," I said, my voice barely audible. "Maybe there is." The word hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. Maybe. It was a pathetic admission, a half-hearted acknowledgement of the seismic shift happening within me. But it was enough. It was a crack in the dam, a sliver of light in the darkness. Ruby's fingers tightened around mine, her touch sending another jolt of electricity through my system. "Maybe what, Josie?" she pressed, her voice gentle but insistent. I looked up, meeting her gaze. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of curiosity, hope, and something else, something that made my stomach flip and my palms sweat. "Maybe," I repeated, "I'm attracted to you." The words felt foreign on my tongue, alien and terrifying. I'd never admitted anything like that to anyone, let alone to a woman. But as I said it, I felt a strange sense of liberation, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Ruby's smile widened, radiating warmth and understanding. "I was hoping you'd say that," she said softly. "You were?" I asked, surprised. She nodded. "I've been dropping hints for weeks. I thought I was being obvious." I blushed, realizing that I'd been so caught up in my own internal turmoil that I'd missed all the signals. "I'm not exactly experienced in this," I confessed. Ruby chuckled. "Neither am I, really. I mean, I've dated girls before, but nothing serious. Nothing like this feels." "This?" I questioned, my heart pounding in my chest. "What is this?" Ruby squeezed my hand. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "But I want to find out. If you're willing to explore it with me." Explore it with her. The thought both terrified and excited me. It was a journey into uncharted territory, a leap of faith into the unknown. But as I looked into Ruby's eyes, I knew that I couldn't resist. "Okay," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm willing." A wave of relief washed over Ruby's face, followed by a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Good," she said, "because I have a few ideas about where we can start." She leaned closer, her breath warm against my ear. "How about dinner?" "My place. I'll cook." The thought of spending an evening alone with Ruby, in her studio, surrounded by her art, sent shivers down my spine. "What will you cook?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "Something delicious," she replied, her voice laced with playful promise. "And maybe a little spicy." I swallowed hard, my imagination running wild. "Okay," I said again, my voice slightly stronger this time. "Dinner. Your place." Ruby grinned, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Great. I'll text you the address." "And Josie?" "Yeah. Wear something comfortable," she said, her voice low and suggestive. "You might want to get creative." With that, she winked, grabbed her book, and stood up, leaving me sitting at the table, my mind reeling, my heart pounding, and my body buzzing with a mixture of fear and excitement. As I watched her walk away, her fiery hair bouncing with every step, I realized that my life was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. The spreadsheet was about to get a whole lot more complicated. And for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that. More than okay, actually. I was eager. My hands were clammy as I stood outside Ruby's studio apartment. The building itself was an old brick structure, the kind that exuded character and history, a stark contrast to the sleek, sterile glass tower where I worked. I checked the address on my phone one last time, confirming that I was in the right place. I'd changed out of my usual corporate attire into a pair of dark jeans and a simple black sweater, hoping it struck the right balance between casual and date-appropriate. Taking a deep breath, I climbed the creaky wooden stairs to the third floor. The hallway smelled faintly of paint thinner and something vaguely floral, an intriguing combination that hinted at the artistic chaos within. I found the door with Ruby's name scrawled on a hand-painted plaque and knocked softly. The door swung open almost immediately, revealing Ruby standing in the doorway, her smile even brighter than I remembered. She was wearing a paint-splattered apron over a simple tank top and shorts, her hair even more unruly than usual. "Josie, you made it," she exclaimed, pulling me inside. The studio was exactly as I'd imagined, a kaleidoscope of colors, textures, and creative energy. Canvases leaned against every wall, some finished, some in progress, all filled with vibrant landscapes and abstract forms. Brushes and paints were scattered across a large wooden table, along with jars of water and rags. The air smelled of turpentine, but it was a pleasant, almost intoxicating scent. "Wow," I said, taking it all in. "This is amazing." Ruby beamed. "Welcome to my sanctuary," she said. "Make yourself at home." She led me further into the studio, past the art supplies and towards a small kitchenette in the corner. A pot of water was simmering on the stove, and the aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air. "Pasta okay?" she asked. "I hope you like pesto." "Pesto's perfect," I replied, feeling my stomach rumble. As Ruby busied herself with the pasta, I wandered around the studio, examining the paintings more closely. I was drawn to one in particular, a large canvas depicting a stormy seascape. The colors were dark and brooding, but there was a sense of raw power and beauty in the crashing waves. "That's one of my favorites," Ruby said, noticing my interest. "It's called Tempest." "It's powerful," I said, struggling to find the right words. "It makes me feel something." Ruby smiled. "That's the point," she said. "Art is supposed to make you feel something. It's supposed to challenge you, to make you think." I looked at her, realizing that she was talking about more than just art. She was talking about life, about pushing boundaries, about embracing the unknown. "I'm trying," I said, my voice barely audible. "I'm trying to feel more." Ruby stepped closer, her green eyes searching mine. "You will," she said softly. "I promise." She reached out and gently touched my cheek, her fingers sending another wave of electricity through me. I leaned into her touch, closing my eyes, savoring the moment. "Dinner's almost ready," she said, her voice husky. "Why don't you pour us some wine?" I nodded, moving towards the small table set for two near the window. As I uncorked the bottle of red wine, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unreality. Here I was in Ruby's studio, about to share a romantic dinner with a woman I barely knew, a woman who had somehow managed to turn my world upside down in a matter of weeks. As we sat down to eat, the conversation flowed easily, fueled by the wine and the growing connection between us. We talked about our hopes, our dreams, our fears, and everything in between. I found myself opening up to Ruby in ways I never had with anyone else, sharing my vulnerabilities, my insecurities, and my secret desires. After dinner, as we were clearing the table, Ruby turned to me, her eyes shining with an unmistakable invitation. "So," she said, her voice low and suggestive, "what do you say we get creative?" My heart skipped a beat. I knew what she meant. The moment had arrived. The point of no return. My breath hitched. The air in the studio seemed to thicken, charged with an electricity that crackled between us. "Creative," I echoed, trying to keep my voice steady, though inside, a whirlwind of anticipation and trepidation was brewing. Ruby stepped closer, closing the distance between us until I could feel the warmth radiating from her body. She reached out, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw, sending shivers down my spine. "I have an idea," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "Something I've been wanting to try." Before I could respond, she took my hand and led me towards a corner of the studio I hadn't noticed before. It was a small, secluded space, hidden behind a large canvas, illuminated by a single string of fairy lights. In the center of the space was a blank canvas, propped up on an easel, along with a collection of paints, brushes, and jars of body paint. My eyes widened in surprise. "Body paint?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Ruby grinned. "I told you to wear something comfortable," she said. "And to get creative." She gestured towards the canvas. "I want to paint you," she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Not with a brush, but with my hands. With my body." My heart pounded in my chest. The idea was both daring and incredibly intimate. I'd never done anything like this before, but the thought of Ruby's touch, her hands exploring my body, filling me with a strange mixture of excitement and vulnerability. I don't know," I stammered, my cheeks flushed. Ruby cupped my face in her hands, her gaze gentle and reassuring. "It's okay if you're nervous," she said. "But trust me, Josie. This will be an experience." She leaned in and kissed me softly on the lips, a tender, lingering kiss that melted away my inhibitions. "Just relax," she whispered, "and let me paint you." With a deep breath, I nodded, surrendering to the moment. Ruby smiled, her eyes filled with anticipation. She reached out and began to unbutton my sweater, her fingers brushing against my skin, sending shivers down my spine. As she slowly undressed me, piece by piece, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vulnerability, of exposure. But there was also a sense of liberation, of shedding the layers of my corporate armor and revealing my true self to this woman, this artist, this lover. Soon, I was standing before her, naked, my body trembling slightly. Ruby gazed at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. She reached out and gently traced the curve of my shoulder, her touch sending another wave of electricity through me. "You're beautiful, Josie," she said softly. "Absolutely beautiful." She dipped her fingers into a jar of crimson paint and began to spread it across my skin, her touch light and sensual. She painted swirls on my chest, lines down my stomach, patterns on my thighs. Her hands explored every inch of my body, caressing, teasing, awakening sensations I never knew I possessed. As she painted, she kissed me, her lips soft and tender at first, then growing more passionate, more demanding. Her tongue danced against mine, exploring the depths of my mouth, igniting a fire within me. I moaned softly, arching my back, pressing myself against her. Her hands roamed over my body, igniting every nerve ending, driving me wild with desire. I reached out and ran my hands through her fiery hair, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss. The taste of her, the scent of her, the feel of her skin against mine was intoxicating, overwhelming. We stumbled back towards the canvas, our bodies intertwined, our movements driven by pure instinct. Ruby pressed me against the canvas, her body hot against mine. The cool, rough texture of the canvas against my skin was a sharp contrast to the heat of our bodies, adding another layer of sensation to the experience. As we kissed, as we touched, as we explored each other's bodies, we created a masterpiece, a living, breathing work of art. The canvas became a reflection of our passion, our desire, our vulnerability, our love. In that moment, surrounded by the colors of our desire, lost in the heat of our bodies, I knew that I had found something truly special with Ruby. Something that transcended logic, something that defied explanation, something that was simply meant to be. Sunlight streamed through the studio window, painting the room in a warm, golden glow. I stirred, my body aching in a way that felt both pleasant and unfamiliar. My skin tingled, remnants of the paint still clinging to my skin like a sweet memory. I opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was Ruby, sleeping peacefully beside me, her fiery hair splayed across the pillow like a halo. Her face was relaxed, her lips slightly parted, and a small smile played on her face. I watched her for a few moments, my heart swelling with tenderness. She looked so vulnerable, so beautiful, so mine. Carefully, I reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "Morning," she murmured, her voice husky with sleep. "Morning," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. She stretched, her body arching against mine, and I felt a familiar surge of desire. "Sleep well?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. "Better than I have in years," I admitted, smiling. Ruby chuckled and pulled me closer, nuzzling her face into my neck. "Me too," she said. "Last night was incredible." "Incredible is an understatement," I replied, remembering the passion, the intimacy, the raw connection we had shared. We lay in silence for a few moments, savoring the afterglow of the night before. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, with the weight of our newfound intimacy. Finally, Ruby spoke, her voice serious. "So," she said, "where do we go from here?" I hesitated, suddenly feeling uncertain. The night before had been magical, but it had also been a leap of faith. We had crossed a line, entered uncharted territory. Now, we had to figure out how to navigate this new landscape. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never done this before. I don't know the rules." Ruby smiled. "There are no rules," she said. "We make our own rules. We figure it out as we go." She reached out and took my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. "All I know is that I want to be with you, Josie," she said. "I want to explore this with you. I want to see where it goes." Her words filled me with a sense of hope, of optimism. Maybe this could work. Maybe we could build something real, something lasting. "I want that too," I said, my voice filled with conviction. "I want to be with you, Ruby." Ruby grinned, her eyes sparkling with happiness. She leaned in and kissed me, a soft, tender kiss that sealed our commitment. "Good," she said, "because I have a feeling this is going to be one hell of a ride." We spent the rest of the morning in bed, talking, laughing, and exploring each other's bodies. We showered together, washing away the remnants of the paint, but not the memories of the night before. As we got dressed, I noticed the canvas from the night before, leaning against the wall. It was a chaotic mess of colors, lines, and textures, a raw and visceral representation of our passion. "What are you going to do with it?" I asked, gesturing towards the canvas. Ruby shrugged. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe I'll keep it. Maybe I'll sell it. Maybe I'll paint over it." I looked at the canvas, seeing not just a mess of paint, but a reflection of our journey, our connection, our love. "I think you should keep it," I said. "It's a reminder of where we started." Ruby smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. "You're right," she said. "It's a reminder of how we got creative." We left the studio hand in hand, ready to face the world, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. We knew that our relationship wouldn't be easy, that we would face obstacles, doubts, and perhaps even judgment. But we also knew that we had something special, something rare, something worth fighting for. We had found love in the most unexpected of places, in the most unexpected of ways. And we were determined to hold on to it, to nurture it, to let it grow. As we stepped out into the sunlight, I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of optimism I hadn't felt in years. The spreadsheet could wait. The world could wait. All that mattered was Ruby and the possibility of a future filled with color, passion, and love. The world was a blank canvas, and we were ready to paint it together. Time unfolded in a tapestry woven with shared moments. There were cozy nights in Ruby's studio, surrounded by the scent of paint and the soft glow of fairy lights, where we lost ourselves in art, conversation, and the intoxicating rhythm of our bodies. There were also more mundane days, navigating the complexities of our lives, my corporate world colliding with her artistic one, learning to bridge the gaps between our seemingly disparate realities. I introduced Ruby to my friends, a carefully curated group of ambitious, driven individuals who initially regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. But Ruby, with her disarming charm and genuine warmth, slowly won them over, challenging their preconceived notions and expanding their horizons. She, in turn, introduced me to her world, the bohemian cafes, the underground art galleries, the vibrant community of artists and musicians who embrace life with a passion I had never witnessed before. I felt like an outsider at first, a fish out of water, but Ruby held my hand, guiding me through the unfamiliar landscape, showing me how to open myself up to new experiences, new perspectives. We faced challenges, of course. There were moments of insecurity, of doubt, of wondering if we were truly compatible, if our love could withstand the pressures of the outside world. My parents, traditional and conservative, struggled to understand our relationship, their silence a heavy weight that settled upon my heart. But through it all, we persevered. We communicated, we compromised, we learned to accept each other's flaws and celebrate each other's strengths. We built a foundation of trust, respect, and unwavering support. 2 years passed in a blur of laughter, tears, adventures, and quiet moments of intimacy. I left my corporate job, trading in my tailored suits for paint-splattered overalls, my spreadsheets for canvases. With Ruby's encouragement, I rediscovered my own artistic inclinations, finding solace and self-expression in the creation of abstract sculptures. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves turned gold and crimson, Ruby took me back to the coffee shop where we had first met. The daily grind was quieter now, the lunchtime rush long gone. We sat at the same table, near the window, where our lives had unexpectedly intertwined. Ruby reached into her bag and pulled out a small, velvet box. My heart skipped a beat. "Josie," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "From the moment I met you, I knew that you were something special. You challenged me, you inspired me, you made me see the world in a whole new light." She opened the box, revealing 2 simple silver bands, engraved with our initials and the date of our first meeting. "I know we haven't been together for that long, but it feels like a lifetime," she continued. "I can't imagine my life without you. So, Josie, will you do me the honor of marrying me?" Tears welled up in my eyes. I nodded, unable to speak. "Yes," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. "Yes, Ruby, I will marry you." She slipped one of the rings onto my finger, and I slipped the other onto hers. As our fingers intertwined, I felt a surge of happiness, of contentment, of knowing that I had found my soulmate, my partner, my love. We kissed, a slow, tender kiss that sealed our commitment, our destiny. Years later, we stood in our own sun-drenched studio, surrounded by our art, our love, our life. Our wedding portrait, a vibrant abstract painting depicting 2 figures intertwined, hung proudly on the wall. We had created our own masterpiece, a canvas of us, a testament to the power of love, acceptance, and the courage to embrace the unexpected. The spreadsheet was long forgotten, replaced by a life filled with color, passion, and the unwavering belief that anything is possible as long as you have love. and each other.